It is Thursday, May 21st, 2026, and this is The High Road, Logistics and Leadership. I'm Dan Miller, the guy who thinks a diesel index is more exciting than a Sunday kickoff.
This is Buck Reynolds.
I'm Jules Sterling.
And I'm Elena Rossi. We have a great show for you today.
Good to see everyone in the ops room today. Look, we had a packed session yesterday talking about the death of the broker shield with that SCOTUS ruling, and I saw those emails. People are definitely sweating the liability shift. We also touched on the DOJ's container cartel probe. Today, the chessboard is shifted again. We're talking about a major EU-US trade pact that just crossed the finish line, plus some heavy-duty energy volatility that's making the fuel surcharge look like a rounding error.
Actually, Dan, the trade pact is less of a final whistle and more of a tactical timeout. But we'll get into that.
Here's the play. Let's start with the big news coming out of the Atlantic. The Guardian and several other outlets are reporting that the EU has officially greenlit the implementation of the US-EU Trade Pact. Some are calling it the Turnberry Pact. Jules, you deal with the high-value retail guys. How much of a relief is this?
Honestly, it's a huge weight off their shoulders for the next few years. Well, okay. The big win is that 15% cap on tariffs. Remember, we were staring down a July 4th deadline where President Trump was threatening to spike auto tariffs to 25%.
Which would have been a total blowout for the machinery lanes.
Right? Absolutely. So the EU is basically dropping tariffs on all U.S. industrial goods. They're giving us better access for pork, dairy, and lobster, which I know our reefers in the Northeast will love. But there's a catch. Elena, you were looking at the suspension mechanism, right?
I was. Actually, you see, the European Parliament didn't just sign a blank check. They added a safety net that allows them to unilaterally reinstate tariffs if they feel the U.S. is discriminating against EU operators. The pact has a sunset clause of December 31st, 2029. It creates a period of what I'd call coerced stability.
Stability? I mean, the thing is, they're calling it a pact, but it sounds like a hostage negotiation. We're locking in 15%? I remember when 5% was enough to make a shipper scream.
Look, Buck, in this market, 15% is the new free. Bottom line, it keeps the freight moving across the pond without a sudden 10% surcharge hitting the dock next month. But while trade is opening up there, the literal flow of oil is tightening elsewhere.
Actually, it's more than tightening. The situation in the Middle East is reaching a boiling point. Iran just formalized what they're calling a controlled maritime zone in the Strait of Hormuz.
Here we go again.
It's serious, Buck. According to Discovery Alert, Iran is now requiring vessel authorization for anything moving through that zone. They're claiming regulatory control. And the market reacted instantly. The EIA reported a crude inventory drop of 17.8 million barrels this week. That is one of the largest weekly declines we have ever seen.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's why my clients are seeing Brent crude at $106 a barrel?
Yep. And retail diesel is sitting at $5.57 nationally. We're pennies away from the 2022 record. It's like playing in a stadium with no grass. Everyone's just sliding around trying to find traction.
My thing is, how are the independents supposed to survive that? You can't just pivot to a new route when the Strait of Hormuz is the main artery.
Well, some are trying. Wood Mackenzie is warning that if this restriction stays in place, we could see $200 oil. We're seeing firms institutionalize bypass routes, but those are expensive and slow.
Now it's time for From the Sleeper Cab, our Thursday segment where we get under the hood of what's actually happening on the asphalt.
Take the wheel, Buck.
Here's the deal. We spend a lot of time in this studio talking about big trade deals and billion-dollar spinoffs. But out on the road, it's the iron that matters. And right now, the iron is failing some of you. There is a critical do not drive warning out from Fontaine Trailer Company.
A do not drive? That's rare.
It's as serious as it gets. We're talking about roughly 250 Fontaine Fusion flatbed trailers. If you're pulling one built between February 2025 and March 2026, pull over. Get your VIN checked against NHTSA Recall 26V291000. The main beams are cracking.
Main beams? Buck, isn't that basically the spine of the trailer?
Exactly. The spine is snapping. And you see, the reason is something called hydrogen embrittlement. During the galvanizing process, atomic hydrogen got into the high-strength steel. It makes the metal brittle. It rots from the inside out. I don't care if you have the best sensors in the world. If that beam snaps at 65 miles per hour with a load of coils on top, game over.
That's a nightmare for risk management, Elena.
Actually, it's a liability catastrophe.
And while we're talking about things that can ruin your week, the FMCSA just went on a rampage. They pulled 12 more ELDs off the approved list yesterday. That's 43 devices gone this year. 888 ELD, Action ELD, Dragon E, the list goes on. If you're using one of these bargain bin logbooks, you've got a 60-day grace period. After July 20th, you're getting put out of service on the spot.
I mean, why are so many failing now?
Because they were self-certified. The manufacturers lied, Jules. They said they met the standards, and they didn't. And look, to round it out, that Supreme Court case I mentioned yesterday, Montgomery versus Caribe, it's official. The broker shield is gone. Brokers can now be sued for negligent hiring. If you hire a carrier with a conditional rating and they cause a wreck, your bank account is wide open.
As it should be. You can't outsource your safety responsibility.
Well, I suppose that's the reality now. From the sleeper cab, that's a wrap.
Sticking with the regulatory theme, did anyone else see the snags with the new MODIS system? FMCSA launched it to replace the old registration system, but according to Landline, carriers are running into massive technical glitches.
Technology failing to fix a problem created by technology? I've seen this movie before.
It's more than a glitch, Dan. It's a capacity squeeze. If new carriers can't register because the portal is down, we're artificially throttling the market.
Right. Sort of. But on the bright side, the House did pass the Veterans Transition to Trucking Act. I actually thought of you, Buck, when I saw this. It cuts through the red tape so veterans can use their GI Bill benefits for apprenticeships without the company needing 50 separate state approvals.
I mean, about time. Those men and women already know how to handle heavy equipment and follow a schedule. We need more of that yes sir, no sir attitude in the cab.
Look, it's a smart play. The ATA says 200,000 service members separate every year. That's a massive talent pool. Speaking of massive, before we move on to the FedEx spinoff, a quick note from our sponsor. Look, strategic logistics requires world-class engineering. This show is powered by the stack developed by Eric Christensen at Neural Network Media. Support the architect behind the code. Visit our Patreon at patreon.com/neuralnetworkmedia for a free trial and access to our daily briefing PDF. Jules, you're the LTL expert here. What's the word on the FedEx divorce?
Okay. So it's officially happening. The FedEx board greenlit the spinoff of FedEx Freight. On June 1st, it hits the NYSE under the ticker FDXF.
FDXF. I like the sound of that. It's like a new expansion team joining the league.
It is. It's the nation's largest LTL carrier. $9 billion in revenue, 40,000 employees. FedEx Corp is keeping about a 20% stake for now, but they'll divest it in 2 years. CEO Raj Subramaniam says this is the final act of their drive program.
I suppose it unlocks value. But, splitting the high-margin freight business away from the integrated network, it's a gamble. Freight has been the reliable profit engine, while Express was struggling.
Exactly. It's a sum-of-the-parts play. The market loves it, but, the operations folks have to make sure they don't lose the synergy. Look, if FDXF starts trading at a premium compared to Old Dominion or Saia, the legacy FedEx stock might actually take a hit.
My thing is, all these spinoffs and tickers, does it change how the pallet gets moved? Probably not. Speaking of moving pallets, did you see that Formula One rail pilot?
Yes. DHL moved 50 containers of F1 equipment from Miami to Montreal entirely by rail. Well, almost 70% of the freight that usually goes by road or air was on the tracks.
Rail? For F1? That's tight scheduling. If that train is 6 hours late, the race doesn't happen.
They used real-time tracking and shock sensors. It's part of the Net Zero 2030 goal. And while that's happening, Under Armour is cutting their SKU count by 25%. They're using agentic AI. Our sister show, The Neural Daily, has been all over this to basically let the supply chain heal itself.
Actually, I saw that too. AI agents that can negotiate with vendors or reroute shipments without a human clicking approve. It reduces the risk of human error, but it increases the risk of a flash crash in the supply chain if the logic is flawed.
Or if the silicon driver doesn't like the weather in Chicago.
Precisely. But look, we should talk about the EPA. This was a surprise. The agency is proposing a 2-year delay on the Tier 4 standards for medium-duty vehicles.
You're kidding? That's the My 2027 cliff everyone was panicking about?
Exactly. Deadline pushed to 2029. Administrator Lee Zeldin basically said the 2024 projections for EV adoption were flawed and unrealistic. This is expected to save the industry about $1.7 billion in engineering costs.
That is a huge relief for the cargo van and box truck fleets. Sort of a reality check for the transition, right?
Look, it's a massive win. You can't force a technology before the infrastructure is ready. Bottom line, the market just told the regulators that the grid isn't ready for a 2027 mandatory electrification. Elena, give us the rundown on Secretary Duffy's new freight plan. I saw something about cargo theft in there.
Yes, the 2026 National Freight Strategic Plan. It targets bottlenecks in the usual suspects: New York, LA, Chicago. But the big news is the cargo theft crackdown. We are losing $18 billion, billion with a B, every day to cargo theft now.
18 billion a day? How?
Organized syndicates, Buck. They're targeting energy supply chains and industrial freight. The plan integrates federal partnerships to treat cargo theft as a national security issue. It's about time we stopped treating it like a victimless crime against an insurance company.
Look, I want to spend the rest of the show on what I think is the biggest shift we've seen in a decade. We've moved from a sourcing economy to an execution economy.
Well, what do you mean by that, Dan?
Bottom line, the game used to be, where can I find the cheapest widget? Now, with all these trade deals and the Hormuz crisis, the game is, how do I get it through the maze of tariffs without going broke? We're seeing what people are calling tariff stacking.
I've seen this in the risk reports. You have one duty for the origin, another for the material, and maybe a third national security surcharge.
Right. You can end up with an effective tax rate of 80% on a single product. So, what are the big players doing? They're using optionality as efficiency. They aren't signing 10-year contracts anymore. They're using bonded warehousing and AI-driven logistics to flip their sourcing in real time. If the US-EU Pact feels shaky, they pivot to Southeast Asia before the sun sets.
Sort of like logistics arbitrage?
Exactly. And it's coming at a time when we're losing some of the old guard who built the physical side of this industry. Robert K. Irving passed away this week.
Midland Transport. I knew a few guys who drove for Midland. Robert was a farmer's footsteps kind of manager. He was always on the terminal floor.
He was. 5th generation of the Irving family. He built that Moncton operation from the ground up in '77. His passing, to me, signals the end of that era where freight moved on handshakes. Now, it's moving on code and real-time tariff analysis.
But we still need the people, Dan. The handshake is just digital now.
Actually, I think both are true. You can have the best AI in the world, but if Buck's trailer snaps because of hydrogen embrittlement, the code doesn't matter. We are in a 2-speed economy. ATA tonnage is up 3.5% year over year, the highest since 2022. But retail sales for Class 8 trucks are down 11%.
Wait, tonnage is up, but sales are down?
Yes. People are running their old equipment longer, or they're buying remanufactured parts because they're scared of the interest rates. But get this, April orders for new trucks surged 201%.
FOMO. I mean, everyone's trying to buy before the 2027 rules hit, even if the EPA just gave them a 2-year breather on the light-duty stuff.
Look, it's a classic pre-buy. Everyone's rushing the gate. Bottom line, we're in a market where the physical volume is there, but the costs of doing business, fuel, insurance, tariffs, are eating everyone's lunch. It's like being in the red zone and getting a 15-yard penalty every other play.
So what's the advice for the brokers and carriers listening today?
Zero trust. Validate your ELDs. Check your VINs. And if you're a broker, you'd better have a very rigorous safety audit trail for every carrier you onboard. The not my problem era is over.
Well said, Elena. Look, that's all for today's High Road. We've seen the EU-US Trade Pact provide some temporary cover, but the real storm is in the energy markets and the regulatory purge. Keep your eyes on those VINs and your hands on the wheel.
Keep the shiny side up.
See ya.
Stay compliant.
Don't let the silicon drivers take your lunch money. We'll see you tomorrow.